Okay, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. I welcome you all for this session on workshop on advanced tools in Blackboard. I can see some of the faculty members who have attended the previous workshop 2 days ago on the basics. But as I can see, most of the faculty members are already experienced and experts on using Blackboard. So most likely they are here just to review after coming back from a summer break. So welcome you all. So what I'm going to do is something very similar that I have done in the previous workshops. I'll spend like 10 to 15 minutes going over the presentation just to give you an overview of the workshop. And then we will have a hands-on session on some of the advanced tools or less used tools in Blackboard. And I'm sure all of you are already familiar and comfortable with Blackboard. Maybe you won't have to have a specific question, or you just want to look at some of the tools that are less used. So let's go over the presentation and then we will go for the hands-on part. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to either raise your hand or type in the chat. I'll try to monitor the chat and try to respond whenever I can. Thank you for that. So my name is Sanaullah, and I'm going to present this workshop on advanced tools in Blackboard. I hope you can see the screen as well as see me as well as hear me. So everything should be okay. Excellent. So the purpose and expectation of this workshop is basically review of some of the advanced tools. I'll provide a list of some of the useful tools and functionality in Blackboard. Give a little bit of definition, a demonstration of these tools, try to provide a pedagogical perspective and share a best practice whenever applicable. The level of this workshop is, participants is medium to advanced. Participants should already be familiar with the Blackboard environment, and I'm sure almost all of you are very comfortable, expert and experienced faculty members. So this is the list of the tools I'll try to go over, and of course any tool that is related and linked to these tools. So very quickly I'll just talk about in one or two statements about each of these tools. Review status is basically a status of any item that you would like your students to confirm that they have reviewed it. So you upload a content and then you ask the students to review it, and they sort of give you a confirmation of that specific item. So that is basically a review status. The next is adaptive release. Adaptive release is more like conditional release. So you have different ways how your content can be released. The typical adaptive release cycle is the date and the time, like when the content should be available or when the test or the quiz or the assignment should be available. But there are other options for adaptive release, such as membership criteria, grade criteria, and review status criteria. So we'll just have a look at some of those criteria in adaptive release. I'm sure you have all used assignments, so we'll quickly go over the assignments, just from an instructor and a student perspective. And I'm sure most of you are already familiar, but we'll look at some of the fine-tuning options available. Blog is like a weblog similar to interaction. So I'll talk about interactivity with students. I'll try to talk about 4 of these tools: blog, discussion, wikis, as well as groups, I think. So 4 of them I'll try to, or journals, I think. So 4 of them I'll talk together in more like how it can be used effectively and efficiently with the student in terms of collecting their input and keeping them engaged. Date management is another nice tool that can be helpful, especially if you are reusing content from a previous semester. So if you copy the content and you want to change all the dates of all the items, for example, you have like 20 quizzes and you have assignments, you have adaptive release criteria applied on certain items. So you can all change in bulk. So I'll try to quickly demonstrate the date management. Then we have a document packager. Document packager is more like uploading content directly into Blackboard, but as a bulk. Instead of uploading 1 or 2 files at a time or a couple of files at a time, you can upload the whole structure. So I'll try to talk about document packager. Again, this can be very helpful if you want to upload content in bulk. Couple of information about email course messages. Again, a little bit of differentiation. I'll try to give an example over there. Grade Center is already we are familiar, but let me talk a couple of Grade Center options, like how to customize, how to add a favorite sort of criteria using the grading schema and so on. So I'll just talk about some of the commonly used features of Grade Center. The essential features are, we are all familiar. Instructors upload grades in the Grade Center, and the students, they see their own grade, and then you can control how the students, how much information the students should see in the Grade Center. I'll talk a little bit about groups, but this is more related to users, so a little bit of group activities. Learning module is basically content clubbed with activities, so you can have all in one place. My grades is more like from the student side, how the student sees the grade. I talked about online attendance in the previous workshop. I do mention a couple of options available. And I'm sure this is quite interesting, especially for the new faculty members, because they should know what are the new, what are the options available for online attendance. Very quickly, I can mention that Blackboard has one built-in online attendance, which is called attendance, and there is another tool called online attendance. You know, the terminology is very similar. And in addition to this, ICTC recently, like a couple of months ago, they have launched online attendance within the portal, which generates QR code so that student can use their mobile phones to scan the QR code and submit their attendance. It's more like integral part of ITC. I will share the link of that recording to the participants if they're interested. So that's one tool you might want to be interested. It's not directly built-in part of Blackboard, but since Blackboard also has that tool available, so it's worthwhile to see which one works for you. Of course, all the online attendance tools have some sort of limitations, which I will try to sort of mention. A couple of more tools include rubrics, safe assign, and student preview. Student preview is more like seeing the course from a student perspective. Safe assign is more like plagiarism detection, similar to Turnitin, that can be enabled within the assignment. And rubrics is more like different criteria for assessment that you explain it to the student. Test surveys and pools, again, I will not be able to cover most of the tests, but I'll try to cover whatever I can from, because test is, when you create a test, you have the results in the Grade Center, so things are linked. Different tools are linked in different ways, and wikis is basically, again, a discussion tool for the student. So again, one important part that I always mention is, as a best practice, it is recommended to use a proper tool for any task. Again, it looks very simple and trivial, but we have seen examples where some faculty members did not use a proper tool. Just as an example, they have used announcements for sending out grades. Which is, again, the students do get information about their grades, but the automatic calculation is not done, the privacy is not there because everybody sees everybody's grades. So things of that sort, if you try to use a proper tool, it is helpful in terms of how the system behaves. Plus, there are different tools that are linked on the back end. For example, there is a retention center which is available in Blackboard. So as an instructor, you can see how different students are behaving, like when are they logging in, have they submitted the assignments, or if somebody is falling back. Now, if you do not use a proper tool, for example, if you do not post grades in Grade Center, that tool will not be able to pick up the information from the Grade Center and demonstrate it or sort of put it in a dashboard format to the instructor. So since the whole system is designed in such a way that the tools are linked and interconnected, it's best, as a best practice, it is recommended to use a proper tool for any specific task that you are trying to do in your course. A couple of information about documentation and services. I did mention this earlier as well. There is a resources page. Just have a look at the resources page in Blackboard when you log in on the upper right side, and then we have those updates on what are the different type of resources available. Excuse me. So we have, in addition to this, we have digital textbook integration by different publishers like Cengage, McGraw-Hill, Wiley, and Pearson. Excuse me. And they have different tools available like WebAssign, Connect, Wiley Plus, and Mustang. These are also integrated, but as an instructor or as a department, the textbook committee has to purchase the access codes in addition to the textbook, so then it will get integrated. So just as an example, accounting department is using Wiley Plus, math department is using WebAssign, and so on. So if you are interested, maybe you contact your department chair or the textbook committee coordinator. couple of other tools like Responders, Turnitin, SafeAssign, they are all available listed on the video on the resources page. So I encourage you to see these resources if you have not already seen. And I'm sure most of you are already familiar with these tools, but if you are a new faculty member, kindly go to the resources page and have a look at these different tools and their availability and how to access them and install them and so on. A couple of information about the modules. We do have instructor mobile app and a student app. You might have already, from a usage perspective, a student app is more useful because it's more like viewing a website compared to an instructor app, where instructor has to upload content and sort of organize the course. So it's more like developing a website for which a laptop or a desktop with a bigger screen is recommended compared to a mobile app. But still, you can still do most of the activities and upload content and sort of post grades, but the functionality is sort of limited as an instructor. It both runs on iOS and Android devices. However, recently there has been a new app which is sort of merging both these two apps. It's called the Blackboard Learn, and this is the single app for all the users. So if you update your current app, it will show something like this with the blue background and Learn, which is a single app. And depending on your role, either instructor or student, you will be able to access the course as per your role. So if you have not already tried it, I will just encourage you to try it. If you already have it, just update it and you should be able to see the new icon. Just one more update on the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra part. I'm sure some of you are already using Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, which is basically a tool for virtual classroom online meetings, which runs in a browser. So this is similar to Zoom or Teams, but it's part of Blackboard. Now, this has been purchased recently or acquired by Class, which is another company. This is an update, basically, which has been acquired by Class, and they are going to sort of develop this Ultra on top of Zoom. So this will not, Blackboard Ultra next year might not be part of Blackboard unless we have the license for Class through the national deal or so on. So just stay tuned for this information about Ultra and Class next year. But this year we should not have any problem with Blackboard Collaborate Ultra if you are using for your classroom activities such as help sessions or office hours and so on. So you can still use it. It's part of Blackboard. But just to give an update, this might not be available next year or so. For support information, the typical routine methods are you should go to help website for Blackboard that gives you the information about different tools and functionalities with HTML help, screenshots, YouTube videos, and so on. If you still face an issue, you can always open an eDisk request and somebody will be able to reply to your issue that you are facing. Or otherwise, you can contact me, have a one-to-one meeting, especially for new faculty members if they are trying to set up their course for the first time and so on. So please send me an email. We can schedule a meeting either offline, physically or online, depending on your availability, and we'll try to sort that out. So this is the support that I can provide. Some of the common issues that I always mention is screen resolution, auto hide menu. I'll try to show it when we log in, especially if you are presenting in a classroom and the screen resolution is different compared to your office PC. The course menu on the left sort of automatically hides. This is trying to maximize the resolution. The only option is you have to bring your mouse back to the left side of the column and click and it will appear. I'll try to show this when I share my screen for the Blackboard login. A couple of other information like managing courses list, accessing course files, bulk upload as items. I'll try to cover some of these common issues in the demonstration in a couple of minutes. So if you have any questions, as I mentioned, please type it in the chat, and I'm going to just switch my screen sharing and I'll try to log in and demo. And if you have any questions, as I mentioned, please type in the chat or you can raise your hand. Okay, so let me just Let me share my screen for the demonstration. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen for the Blackboard login. So what I'm going to do is we have this presentation here. Let me just also open the presentation for the list of the tools. Okay. So let's start. So what I have here is I have created a course that is for this workshop only, which is Workshop Advanced Tools for Blackboard. It's not currently available. I have added all the participants who have registered in this workshop. So I'm going to just make the course available by clicking the Make Available icon. Once I do that, just refresh. If you are already logged into Blackboard, just refresh. You can see this course in the part of the list for this term, which is term 231. It should be available as Advanced Tools in Blackboard, August 2023. And the presentation that I just showed, this presentation is already available, as well as a handout. So very quickly, let me just talk about the handout in addition to this presentation. So if I open the handout, it basically contains all of these different tools, maybe in a little bit different order, depending on which tool was initial, depending on a different order. So it talks about adaptive release, 2 pages or 3 pages of each of these items that each of these tools that I'm going to cover today in the workshop. Okay, so let me start. I hope all of you can see my screen right now. So let me start with the review status. The first one is the review status. Now the review status, if I look, let me just open the handout. Just give me 1 second, please. Let me just scroll down to the review status page. Okay, so review status is basically, as I mentioned, your students need to click review to demonstrate that they have reviewed an item. Think of it as a confirmation. So you can enable review status using adaptive released, or you can just review directly from the contextual menu. So sorry about that. Let me just, so if you have any item, just click on the drop down and say set review status as enabled or disabled. So by default, it is disabled. You have to enable it. And once it shows enable, you will see something like this. So let me just demonstrate this very quickly. So if you have, let me just clear this. I think I enabled this before. Yeah. So by default, what happens is, let me just clear out the adaptive release for this one as well. I think I was trying certain adaptive release advanced. Let me just clear out this rule. Okay. So by default, when you have this presentation, you have this PDF file that I have uploaded earlier. So if I want, as an instructor, I want the students to enable reviews. I mean, the students to set the review status, get an acknowledgement. All you have to do is click on drop down and say set review status. By default, it's disabled. You can always click enable and submit. Now, when you enable, it says enable review. So the review item has been enabled. So why don't you all, I'm sure you can all log into Blackboard and access this course. Why don't you just click on this course, access it, it's already available, and click on review. So how the student sees it, let me show you if you have not already logged in. So let me go to student preview so that I can see the course as a student. So I will see the course and below it, I'll see mark as reviewed. So this is how the student sees it, and I can click on review. Basically, review is a toggle switch. It's not like a permanent mark that once you have clicked reviewed, you cannot always come back. You can always return and the setting goes back. So whenever a student is able to review, I can, as an instructor, drop down and click on user progress. Now, when I click on user progress on this item, I can see that the following students have reviewed on this date and time. So thank you all. About 6 faculty members have reviewed it. The others have yet to review. So this way you can control how, if a student has actually seen your content and clicked on review. Now it's also possible that the student might not have opened the document. They just click review just for the sake of, trying it out. But in that case, the student, they can always pull it back. So let me show you from a student perspective. If I do something like this, if I settings, let me not delete this user. I'll try to keep the preview user. I will click on mark reviewed and it says, yes, it has been reviewed. So now let me go back to the instructor role. Although I have not clicked the file, for example, I can see user progress and I can see more students have clicked reviewed, including myself as a preview user. You can notice two things over here. First is visibility. It's visible to everyone and it's reviewed by certain. It's not reviewed, although it's, for example, visible to other students in the list. I can just show all there are about 100 participants here. It's visible to so many, but it's not reviewed by everyone. So this way you can control. Now, if I put it back, like I have entered the review at this date and time, I can always go back to my student preview mode. And as a student, I will just uncheck it back. I'll say this item will be unreviewed, continue, yes. So now the student says, I have not reviewed it and I just unchecked it. And when the student unchecks it, it's like a toggle switch, as I mentioned. You can always click on user progress and you can see that this the preview user that I was using somewhere here. Yeah, this preview user, has not been reviewed. So it's like a toggle switch. And I hope that's very clear. Now, this can be interestingly used in combination with adaptive release, where it makes a little bit more sense, or sort of controlling the order of availability of contents. So that is essentially about the review status. Any questions at this point? Nothing. Okay. So let me just talk about the first. The another option is adaptive release. As I mentioned, adaptive release allows you to control when content is shown based on a specific criteria. So if the course is more interactive and tailored to individual needs. So what happens is there are 4 criteria. You can either release the content based on a date criteria. For example, when or what date or time this item should be available. For example, you created a midterm exam, but you want to release it only at a specific date and time after the first midterm, for example, or after the first major. So you can upload content, but just put a date criteria. So let me just try that very quickly on the course. I can say edit. By default, it's available. I can select a date and time. Let's say it's available today, but after 10:30, for example, and submit. And once it's available, there's no time limit to disable it. So by default, item is hidden from the students. It will be available on this date and time. So this is the first adaptive release criteria, which you can also do it from the edit criteria. Otherwise, if you click on adaptive release, you can see the date criteria has already been set, because you have set it from somewhere else, but you have a date criteria here as well. The second criteria is the membership criteria. You can make it available to specific users. So instead of showing it to all the students, sometimes there is, for example, group assignment that you want to give to a specific group, or you give an additional assignment. For some reason, the student has missed an exam, so you give an additional exam to that student only. Then you select it by a specific criteria. And the way to do it is something similar. You click on adaptive release for that item. You click on adaptive release for this item, and you can say it's available to specific user. Let's say I'll just select the first name and submit. So it selected the username, and I click submit. So now when I click on this drop down for this adaptive release, there are 2 conditions over here. So if I click on the adaptive release, I can see that there are 2 conditions. First condition is the date condition. It's available to everyone today after 10:30. And then I added a membership criteria. It's available to Dr. Abdul Al only to him, nobody else. And that too, it will be available after 10:30. So now when I click on the drop down and say user progress, I will see something like this. It's not visible to anyone right now. Okay, it's not visible, but we have a date criteria and the membership criteria. So at 10:30, it will automatically become available to Dr. Abdullah, but nobody else. So in order to just to expedite our viewing process, I'm going to remove the date and time criteria. So I'll go to adaptive release. I'll just uncheck this. So let's exclude the time criteria, but only visible to Dr. Abdullah. And then when I click on user progress, I can see that, let me just sort by visibility. Just a second. I have to sort by last name, I think. Oh, there are two criteria. Sorry, I just had to release the criteria from here as well. Yeah, there was a criteria of the date over here as well, and I click submit. Okay, now when I do this and I click on user progress, I can see that nobody else can see it except Dr. Abdullah. He can see it and he has reviewed it. So if I log in myself as a student, I will not be able to see that presentation because it has been adaptively released only to that specific member. So this way, using adaptive release, you can make any specific item available to a specific student or a group of students. Let me just delete that criteria so that we can have everyone visible. So if I want to remove this, I just delete this user in the adaptive release and I click submit, and then this tool is visible to everyone. I hope that's clear. Now the third option is grade. If a grade item was attempted or received a certain score, for example, less than or greater or equal to, then you can have this visibility. So very simple, in simple terms, it means something like this. If a student has scored, let's say 70% on assignment 1, then make this item visible to that student. So you have to click on drop down adaptive release. The first one is the date, second one is the membership, third is the grade criteria. So if you have any assignment, for example, let's say this was the assignment on Planet paper, user has at least one attempt and a score of less than equal to 70%, for example, only then make it visible. But again, as you know, expected, whenever you apply certain criteria, you always have to go to user progress and come back and make sure that whatever you are applying should make sense for the student and he should be able to see this the item as per your criteria. So this is the grade criteria. And finally, the fourth status is about the review status. If somebody has clicked review, only then you should enable it. So again, this is again, if you want to make an item visible only after they have reviewed certain previous items. So let me just show you what I mean. So right now we have these two items, presentation and a handout. So I don't want the students to see the handout unless they have reviewed the presentation. So what I'll do is, this has to be enabled review, and this is visible only when they have reviewed the previous item. So what I'm going to do is, I select this second item. This, I have to apply a condition over here, which is the review status, and I click on review status and I browse for this item, which is the presentation. So they should review the presentation, and once the presentation is reviewed, this handout will be available. So it says this selection will turn on review for the selected item. So if the previous item was not enabled for review, even it will work in that case. And I click submit. So now this has to be reviewed and then this will be available. So if I want to look as a student how the course looks like, so this is a presentation, this is available. So I can look at the presentation, okay, as a student. Okay, this is the presentation. I come back to the course and then I click mark reviewed. What will happen after mark reviewed? The handout will appear, because it will not appear until you mark reviewed for the first item. So this way you control the availability of certain items, acknowledging the student, getting an acknowledgement from the student that only if you acknowledge that you have reviewed this item, it will be visible. And similarly, if the student sort of unchecks it, as expected, this item will get hidden automatically. Basically, you have not reviewed it, so you are not supposed to view it. So this is very quickly about review status and adaptive release. I hope this is very clear, and you might have already used it or tried it, but if you have not, I think it will be interesting for you to try out. So any questions at this point? Okay, no questions. Thank you. So
No,
let me go back. Yeah, sure, please go ahead. Was there any?
Thank you. No questions so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Okay, so let me just go to a couple of different tools over here. So the next tool is assignments. So if I click on assignments, there are a couple of assignments that have already been created over here. So when you create an assignment, it will be under assessments and assignment. You have to give a name. For example, I can give homework 1, for example, some descriptions, instructions, attach a file, set a due date, possible points. You can also add a rubric over here. So I'm not sure if you have already used a rubric, but you can also create a rubric over here or create from existing. So let's see if I already have a rubric. Okay, there is a rubric for essay. So if I'm writing an essay, I can just quickly view it like this. So a rubric, as I mentioned, is more like defining the criteria and for defining a criteria and level of expectation from a student, like how will he be evaluated or assessed based on a specific criteria. So if he's writing an essay, you have state a position, you have novice, competent, or proficient, you get these many points. If you support the hypothesis of what you are saying, you get these many points. How you organize your essay, you get these many points. So if I'm going to use this criteria, there is a built-in rubric criteria that's available. So you rate the student's argument based on these. So the student knows what he's expected to do. I can use this rubric, and I can use it to the default settings, or I can change the points. So it's 15, 20, and 25. So it's almost 40, 60. It's out of 60 points. You can add more columns, add more rows, and so on. Let me just use these default options. So I'll click submit. So this will be out of 75, and this is a rubric that has been used. So I can say, for example, essay homework 1. I can give a topic about planet. So write an essay about planet, and these are the rubrics that you are going to use. So this I'm sure some of you might have tried rubrics, but I'm not sure everyone has tried. So I encourage you to try out, and we can see how the student will be able to sort of see the assignment with the rubrics. A couple of information more on submission details. You can either submit as an individual submission, group submission, or portfolio submission. Again, I'm sure a lot of us have tried as individual and group, but if you have not tried as a portfolio submission, I encourage you to do that. Portfolio is basically any student assignment that he can reuse it by developing a portfolio. There's another sort of talk on the portfolio. I'm not going to go into that, but if you have ever used portfolio submission within the course or encourage the students to use portfolio, it's available over here, and you have to submit the assignment as a portfolio. Portfolio is like a small website that can be reused later on, even after the course finishes, for the student, so that he can submit it in his resume and so on. So you can ask students to submit portfolio submissions. So in our case, we are going to use the individual submission. You can have multiple attempts, single attempt, unlimited attempts. You can enable plagiarism check using Safe Assign and allow students to see the Safe Assign originality report and exclude submissions from the global references. A couple of options more over here in terms of grading options. There are 2 options in grading, which is anonymous grading versus delegated grading. Now, as an instructor, especially if you are a coordinator for the course, you do typically have some graders assigned to you by the department, and you can add the graders. Now, when you add a grader, it can do anonymous grading, which is usually not recommended in our case, because you need to assign a student a grade, and you don't want to hide the student IDs from you or the grader. So, however, in any specific case, you can use this. But when you enable delegated grading basically means the student or a grader, I mean, whenever you have a grader or a teaching assistant, they will give a grade to the student, but you as an instructor will finally approve that grade and able to reconcile those grades. So the student does not see the grade unless and until the instructor has reconciled and approved the grades given by the grader. So this is especially helpful if you are a coordinator and you have multiple graders, and sometimes you want to unify grades based on criteria and so on. So this is helpful, especially in those cases. So delegated grading encourage you to consider this if it's relevant to you. So I'm just unchecking that one. Finally, display of grades. You basically want to display the grades, show the average, mean, and so on. Primary score, secondary score is only for displaying grade center and so on, and make the assignment available. So now once I click this assignment available, let me just drag and drop it to the top. So now this assignment is available. I encourage you to at least just have a look at the assignment as a student and upload something. So if I click on this assignment, I'll see this information, maximum points possible. Let me just go as a student and check it out. So if I go to a student, click on assignment and click on essay, I should be able to see this. I'm just trying to see where is the rubric information. Let me see if I have enabled the rubric. So I'll go to assignments, I'll go to edit. Okay, show rubrics to students. So it was not visible. So I'll have to say yes with rubric scores or after grading. So let me show the rubrics to the students so that at least the student knows what is available and used for grading or used for secondary evaluation. So I'm using it for grading. And then when I see this planet paper, I should be able to see the rubric over here. I think I'll have to, yeah, it's points possible. And this is the rubric that the student will see, that you will be able to get the score based on these criteria. So this is about the rubric and the assignment. Any questions at this point? Okay, of course, whenever there are questions, I try to just stop for a couple of seconds just to finish one topic and ask. But of course, if there are any questions, please feel free to write in the chat. I don't see any questions there. Thank you. So let's come to the next tool, which is date management. Now, if you go to Blackboard and if you scroll down till the course tools, you will see one of the item as date management. Date management is something very interesting. If you are copying a course from a previous semester or earlier, typically what happens is you have different items for a date. Just a second, let me show you that. So in my assignment, for example, that I just created, essay homework on planet, I have a date which is there was supposed to be a due date. Let me just keep the due date, for example, 18th of August, for example, and so on, and click submit. So this was the due date for the assignment. When I click over here, I should be able to see that there is a due date for this assignment. Now, in this way, there are so many other assignments. Of course, there is some do not have a due date, some have a date, and so on. So there are different items, especially even in the course contents where you have different visibility dates. For assessments, you might have some more different dates. Let me see. For assessments, you have quizzes available on a different date and so on. So what this date management tool does is, if I go to date management and let me use the default information. What date management does is it basically selects all the items that have dates on it. So this homework essay, the assignment has this date, another task has this date, another submit paper. You can see these varying dates. They have starting dates, due date, availability date, and so on. So you can change in bulk. So select all, as adjust the dates, increase it by 3 days, for example, and so on. So when I click on that, all the dates have been updated by adding 3 days. So you can either select multiple items, increase the dates, and then or do a selective, like only the announcements or only the assignments or specific due dates only. So whatever criteria that you would like to have, you can select and bulk change it. Or if you are using the same course in exactly 1 year, you can adjust the whole number of days by, shift it by 100 days, for example, and all the dates will be automatically adjusted. So things of that sort, I think it's very interesting, especially if you are reusing courses and content from a previous semester. So that's essentially about the date management. Let me talk a little bit about interaction with the students. So if I look at the handout, let me just come to the. Okay. So when you are using interaction of students, there are different tools, and one of the tool is discussion board. Another tool is blog, which is like weblog. The third tool is journal, and the fourth tool is wiki. So these are all very similar tools with fine tuning of different how the interaction happens. So for example, discussion board is a little bit of medium interaction. If you can see, this is medium interaction. Students choose to participate. If another student has replied, they can express their ideas, gather feedback, refine their opinion, and so on. So this can be good for posting ideas for a project, or share initial thoughts, brainstorm, and so on. So this is sort of medium level of interaction. Blogs are also very similar. Blog is like more like weblog, and they can showcase something very similar. But this is more like one person writing a blog, another commenting if they are interested to do it. So very similar to discussion, but it's organized. Discussion topic is organized based on a topic. Blog is organized more like reverse chronological order. So it's just the order of things, but the interaction is very much similar. If you look at journals, journals are a little bit low interaction because they are supposed to be private feedback from the instructor. So you write your thoughts, you have your concerns privately, and it's more like taking notes in the class, for specific questions that you would like to ask the instructor, get a feedback, and so on. So those things can be little private. I mean, this low level of interaction because they are sort of private and sort of meant for the student and the instructor one-to-one. And then finally, we have wikis. Wikis are more like a Wikipedia page. Within Blackboard, you can have wikis. This is more like high level of interaction where you can have intense collaboration through edits, comments. Student can, write their. It's like more like a Google Docs web page where everybody can contribute, but it keeps a log and everything. So it's more like much interaction. Now, as a best practice, as a recommendation and best practice, you can use a combination of these tools. So you have interactive tools provide an opportunity to construct rich assignments and of other means to evaluate students. So you can use discussion boards and wiki in combination. So discussion board is more like posting an item or a topic, medium level of interactivity, and then in the wiki you can have detailed sort of higher level of interaction with detailed input from the students. Journals can be combined with blogs, for example. Journals are very private, low level of interaction. Blogs are medium level of interaction. So you can grade a blog and receive full topic, but give the input to the student in a journal, for example, and so on. So you can use these different tools in combination with different tools. So let me just talk about these 4 tools over here. So we have blogs. So blog is something like a topic that has been created, and it says you give a specific entry. If you'd like to add a blog entry, the students can create a blog entry. Just write, okay, my first input, for example, and post an entry. You can write some, so everybody else sees this post and so on with the specific date and time and everything. So this is about blog. If you want to use discussion board, it's again very similar. You have some topics that have already, this is organized by topics. So you have different topics and everybody has different posts over here and so on. So you have a topic about astronomy overview. students are participating. I have copied this course from one of the course made available by the Blackboard consultant. So this content is a little bit old, but the tool is basically just trying to demonstrate a showcase of what the students have entered, and you will see something like this. So that's about the discussion board. You have different topics. You create a forum. You can even grade a forum. You have the standard options like the availability of the forum, settings of the forum if you want to grade, allow members to subscribe, allow anonymous posts. So a couple of standard options available in discussion post. This is coming because the ownership was by somebody else, so that's getting the message. Especially this happens especially if you copy from the previous course to another course. So this sort of gives you a warning if you want to assign a post to a specific instructor or student. Now, if you have noticed, there is a question: could any of these replace WhatsApp? Well, to be honest, WhatsApp it's a different level of interaction with the two. It's linked with your mobile phone number rather than embedded in Blackboard. So you can replace, but I think in my opinion, WhatsApp is more easily accessible to students immediately. And by the way, to be very honest, WhatsApp is, the focus is different. WhatsApp is more like a social tool. This is more like an educational tool. So you have to, work out a balance how it can be used. I have seen some instructors use WhatsApp for their courses, like make one group for that course for that semester, and then delete it, or have a account with a different number, just so that you don't sort of mix your personal social content with the course content. So different strategies can be tried out. Okay, so the third tool, before I come to the third tool about the student interaction, I just want to mention that as per our experience and input from some of the faculty members, some instructors mentioned that this discussion board is a little bit, very simple and naive, and it's not very interesting design or much easy to interact. So they found out that there's another tool called Piazza. Let me just show you the tool. This is called Piazza. This is more like an online discussion. Is a free online gathering place which is online. So I'm not promoting the tool, but I just want to mention that this tool is available and it can be linked with Blackboard, and it is already linked in Blackboard. So if I just say, if I come back to this tool, so instead of just, I can have a discussion board, for example. So if I just add a discussion, let me just do that. Just 1 second. So if I want to add a discussion board, I can link to any specific, for example, link to let me link to the whole discussion board page, and next. So on the main web page, I can ask the students, discussion boards, give some description over here. Something like, please post your discussion topics here. And I click submit. So on the first page itself, you'll see the discussion board instead of going over here. So you can get things a little bit more focused. So similarly, if I click over discussion board, I'll come to the same place. Just ignore this for the time being. So I can either click over here or come from the main page. I can basically adding a shortcut. So in addition to this discussion board, I can add a tool called Piazza. So if I add a tool called Piazza, I'll call it the same. And I click submit. This tool is also for discussion, but it is outside Blackboard. Just to give information to the students. So you will get a link for Piazza, and if I click on it, it basically tries to connect, create a course or link a course for the first time with your email address, estimated enrollment. It has some free classes, I think, for you to try out, maybe 2 or 3 classes. I am not sure. I don't use this tool on a regular basis, so I'm not aware what is the most recent update or requirement. But if you are interested, because faculty members have mentioned that this tool is interesting in terms of how it sort of gives you like a visual, sort of, how do I put it? It's like a visual information of how many posts per class were there, and how many students have interacted. So it's a little bit more fluid design, better interface, and of course this is not free. There is some pricing for it. There is free only for a couple of courses if you want to try. So just have a look before you use this tool. But again, some faculty members have experienced that this is a nice tool to have for discussions compared to a discussion board and so on. So I encourage you to just try out, and if you are interested, maybe we can think of, if many faculty members use it, we can think of acquiring it, but that is at a later stage. So there are other tools for student interaction, which I did mention. So we have seen discussion boards, we have seen blogs. If I look at journals and wikis, they are again very similar. If I click on the journal, you'll see that there are some private journals or group journals. So you can set the level of privacy, or you can create a new journal. So it's again similar to writing a discussion board post or a wiki page, or any other interactive tools like a blog, but it is a little bit more private, as I mentioned, and low level of interaction, supposed to be between an instructor and a student typically. But of course, you can open it for other students, have more interaction if you want to, but it allows you for different options. The last tool is wikis, and again, if you click on wikis, there is a wikis link. You have, it's again Wikipedia. It's like a Wikipedia page where everyone is sort of open to contribute. It's an open forum, more like they are encouraged to participate in whatever information they have, so that it eventually becomes like a Wikipedia page where students can go in and sort of use it as a reference material. So I'm sure all of you were at least familiar with some of the tools, but just to try out, you have to sort of look at these tools, see if they make sense in your course. If you are using a group assignment, you want to have wikis and so on. Excellent. So it's almost halfway through. Let me just take a 5 to 7 minute break over here, and if there are any questions, I can entertain. Otherwise, we'll just take a quick break and come back in about like 7 minutes, if that's okay.
That's great.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. I'll just stop the share, pause the share right now, and I'll come back in a couple of minutes. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Let me just continue from where I left. And yes, regarding asking your question, yes, regarding the recordings available, yes, it will be available to all the faculty members later on, after all our sessions have completed. So yes, I'll send you the links later on. So let me continue from where we stopped. But before that, let me just make one small announcement. I'm sure you might have heard that we have a new version of Blackboard coming in next year, sometime next year. So today afternoon at 2 p.m., I'll try to give you a sneak peek of the new version of Blackboard. So you are most welcome to attend this session. And of course, there will be a recording. If you are not able to make it for whatever reason, the recording will also be sent. So just stay tuned and I wanted to inform you that such an activity is going on in the background. So I'll give you a little bit more details in the afternoon session webinar. Thank you. Okay, let's come back to where we were. We did review a couple of tools that are sort of less used or advanced tools. Advanced in terms of you might not be using it, but once you are aware of it, maybe that makes sense, and it might be relevant to you in your teaching activity. So that's the idea for the advanced tools. So let me just go to the remaining couple of tools. I'll try to talk about the email versus course messages. If I see the handout. So email versus course messages. I'm sure you are all familiar, but let me emphasize very quickly. In Blackboard Learn course, you can send an email to other course members, external email. So when you use sending an email, you will receive it in your Outlook. Of course, there are certain limitations. First of all, is you cannot send to a member who is, you cannot send it to anyone who is not a member of this course. And more importantly, Blackboard Learn does not keep a record of the sent email. So it's basically one way, and that too without keeping a record, because the system generates lots of email addresses. So it's designed in such a way that it does not keep a record. Only in your Outlook inbox, you will get a copy of the message that has been sent to the course, within the course. And the email will append the course name, so the student will know which source course the email is coming from. So email is more like a one-way communication. Especially, you cannot send an email back, because if you reply to that email, you will get back in your Outlook. So it's more like sending an email. As opposed to course messages are part of the course. So whenever you use a course message, it's like an inbox sent, and you get a copy, you save a copy, and the student has to log into the course to see the details of this message. They typically get an email notification saying that you have a new course message. So they get a notification whenever there is a new course message. So very quickly, if I want to show from Blackboard course, you can click on send email. When you send an email, you can send it to all the users in this course. So from me, when I send an email, everyone will get a message, and I can return a receipt or attach a file and write a message. So all the participants in this course will get it. If I do a selective, like groups or teaching assistants, or selective users, single or select users, you can select which users should get this email. Right now, I don't want to generate too many emails. Just for the sake of demonstration, I'll select, let's say, a random couple of users, and then I can send a message, testing. Email from Blackboard. Or I can just select all from here, move it over here. All of them will get an email. And I click send. It will generate 100 emails. You will get it in a couple of seconds. So your email was sent to 99 recipients. So immediately you get an email. You can set it to all students or teaching assistants. So if there are teaching assistants, there should be at least one valid email, valid user who is a teaching assistant. So by default, if I look at the users and groups and click on users, for example, and if I say all the users in this course, I can see the role of all the users by default is student over here. And even I got an email. By the way, I got so many emails because people have been participating. If somebody has uploaded an essay, I'll come to the Grade Center and I'll see over here. So you'll get a lot of notifications. So I'm trying to change somebody's role. I'm going to make Dr. Abdul Al as a teaching assistant. Let me make a couple of more as a grader, for example. I can see Dr. Bendania, for example. I'm just selecting something from I'll make Dr. Ahmed Bandania as a grader, for example. And I can change the role of users. And then if I go to send email, and if I say all teaching assistants, it will go only to Dr. Abdullah, for example, or a group of teaching assistants in this course. And if I select a specific group, I mean student user group, I have to have a group. All instructors of this course, it's just me only, or and Sanaullah, I have two IDs as instructors, and so on. So this email is very interesting, but by default it is disabled for students. So the students do not see it, because if the students see it, they can send it to other users or other groups which you might not want in a classroom. So excuse me. So you have this email. Now, if for some reason you want to enable the send email, but selectively remove a couple of groups from here, for example, the students can send email only to teaching assistants and instructors, but not to other users. So what you have to do is you have to go to course tools. Under course tools, you have just a second. You have under customization, you have tool availability. And there are so many tools, and you can control the availability of the tool. Sending email, I can configure the email settings by a drop down over here, and I can say make this available only to teaching assistants and instructors. By default, it's all for it will be all by default, but I had changed it earlier, and I click submit. When I click submit, I send email. This is for an instructor, but when I make this link available, show this link for everyone, for example, and I click on student preview, and when I click on send email, the students can send email only to teaching assistants and instructors, but they cannot send it to others in this course. So this is how you control it. Let me repeat that. If you want the students to send emails to different roles in the course, you can control it by, first of all, enabling send email link in the course, so the students have this link. And then under customizations and tool availability, you can customize the role of email by selectively selecting the role of either teaching assistant, instructor, or others. I have a question over here. If the course is coordinated course, is other instructors will be included? Yes. Typically, when I create special courses, which are like common courses for multiple sections of a single course, all the instructors are added as either teaching assistant or instructor, depending on how the coordinator wants. So once that is mentioned, you can select the role. I mean, as an instructor, you can select who can be teaching assistants or who can be graders, and then you can collectively send an email to all the teaching assistants in one shot. So that way it can be helpful. I hope that answers the question. Okay. So the next part is about course messages. Course messages is a little bit more part of the course. So you have an inbox and a sent. You create a message. You send it to, for example, select all. Let me just select all, send it, subject, testing message from testing course message. And I can browse an attachment or send. Now, when I send a course message, I have an inbox, which is testing course message. I get a message from this to everyone, or from the sent email, I have a course message that this message was sent to all the participants like this, and I can forward, I can delete, which is more like an internal small email that runs within the course. Now, there are pluses and minuses of both email versus course messages. The biggest negative part of the email is you don't get a copy in your Blackboard, so you are not sure if that email was sent or not, but you get it in Outlook. So you get a lot of emails in Outlook. Course messages is interesting if you want to keep all the communication within the same course, so that later on, if you use it in the next semester, or you want to sort of keep a record of students sending messages, it's all part of the course. You don't have to go outside Blackboard to access that, or sort of remember where the course messages were and so on. So that's essentially about email versus course message. I'm sure you might have used both these tools in a simple setting, but at least this gives you a perspective on how to contact, make different groups and send email to like teaching assistants or send email to specific group of users and so on. Excellent. So now let's come to groups, because groups is also relevant to users and emails and so on. So let's talk about groups very quickly. By default, if I look into the course, I have users, which are typically students, which I promoted 2 of them for teaching assistant and grader, but typically I have this as users. Now, if you want to use a group activity, let me just show you where the groups are in this one. In the handout, by the way, if you just scroll, it's about a 36-page document, which talk about all these different tools in 1 or 2 pages, so that you get an idea of using the essential functionality of this tool. I think groups were a little bit at the top. Say for assigned date management. Okay, maybe it's not available here, but I can quickly talk about it. So if you click on users and groups, and users, you'll get the whole list of users. But if you click on groups, there are certain groups that have been created. So you can create multiple groups and you can assign. So randomly, if I click on this group, I can create a new self-enroll group or manual enroll group or a group set. I would encourage you to start with manual enroll group part, where I can say, let's say, group for section 1, for example. If it's a coordinated course or a common course, you want to have group for section 1. Default settings: do you allow blogs, gradings in this group? Do you allow discussions, email exchange, journals, tasks, wikis? So whatever group activity that you would like to have, you can either create a smart view, add users and so on, or you can also add users later on. So group section 1, I can just say edit the group, add members later on. For example, I can click on add users. I can select some of the users. Let me randomly select a couple of users from the top 5, 6 and submit. So it will add these users in group number section 1. And somebody also has created a group, because I think most likely a teaching assistant, because you do not have access to groups over here. Now, if you look at on the upper right side, you will see group sets over here on the right. There are no group sets. And if you see all users, you will see that there are all the users and some have been assigned to group 1. So this way you can see which student, and you can assign a student to multiple groups. So for example, if I create another group called group section 2, for example, and section 3, for example, let me create one more. I'm doing it manually, but you can do it in bulk also if you upload in bulk. So if you, instead of creating, you can say import multiple groups in a CSV file. There is more help over here, which shows you what are the format, how the imported should be in a specific format for groups or members. Just download the CSV file. This will give you a blank template that will, you just have to fill and upload. That will create different groups as well as different add members to different groups. So I have created 3 groups. I have added 6 members in one of the group. And then if I look at all users over here, I can see that there are these 6 are assigned to one group, and I can add the others to this different group just by clicking add group and section 2, for example. And for example, if this student is in group 1, I can add this student to group 2 as well. So the student can be in multiple groups if you want to. The whole reason for group is you have different activities related to groups. For example, there are some assignments that you want to give as a group. There are some discussion items, some sort of interaction that is usually more meaningful in a group. Now, by default, if you have created some groups and if you want students to automatically enroll, if you remember, if you see over here in the left side, there is a link for groups. So you can just go ahead and create it. By default, it's not there, but if you want to, you can just click on this group. If it's not there by default, you can always, as an instructor, click on plus and a tool link and select groups from this tool link. Call it my group, for example. Make it available to users and click submit. When you do that, you will get my groups over here, which basically takes you to the same page of the groups where you can either create and assign students and so on. As a student, you have a little bit of limitations on how you access the groups. You can essentially create a group or sign up for a group. So I've seen somebody has created a group and you can sign up for a group. So this group is group members Dr. Ziduri has signed. I have also signed in. As once I sign in, I get these different options. I know who are the group members, what group assignments are available, what group tools are available for this group, and so on. So if I come back to groups, I will see that this group has been created and so on. So this is essentially about group and group activities. I encourage you to see if this is relevant, especially if you are using a common section or a coordinated section where you can, upload members of a different group and assign different activities. Again, it's a little bit of overhead compared to working with individual sections where you actually have the students from a single section. Okay, let me talk a little bit about Grade Center. I'm sure all of you have used Grade Center. So the Grade Center here is Grade Center and Full Grade Center.
Mr. Sanallah,
Yes,
can I ask a
Dr.
question?
Yes, sure. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Regarding groups, can I create a group, for example, for students such that they can submit a single report or like
Yes, of course.
Yeah, but when I grade this report, then the grade will be assigned to all students in the group. Can we do this?
Yes, of course. Let me just show you very quickly. Now that we have created a group, couple of groups are already created. Now, if I go to assignment, and there is an essay assignment, which basically was an individual assignment. So what I'll do is, instead of this individual assignment, let me edit this essay homework 1 assignment. And instead of assigning, this has already been assigned, and so I cannot change it. Let me just define a new assignment. I will call it a group assignment 1. Okay, and due date is, let's say, whatever, tomorrow. Points possible is 10. And the submission details, I have to make it as a group submission. The moment I say group submission, it gives me different options which item to select. So this is available for all the groups, let's say. Select all and select all the groups that it is assigned to. Okay. And if I click on submit, now this is a group assignment. Now, if you notice in the groups, me as a student, I am part of, okay, there are, Zido is a group which Dr. Zidori, I think, created. In this, there are 5 members. Okay. Dr. Zidori, John Hamilton, myself, Dr. Dulejan, and Dr. Abdul Malik. So let me go as a student and upload an assignment over there. So very quickly, let me just recap. We have a group assignment. And on behalf of the whole group, 5 students, I'm going to log in as a student in the group assignment. Okay, now somebody has submitted. There was only one assignment, so it has been already submitted. Now, if I see the exit preview, now if I go to the Grade Center and Full Grade Center, there is a group assignment, and I can see that because somebody has submitted, all the 5 submissions are showing in. Like the icon legend for the yellow means needs grading. So if I look at any of the grading, this is a group attempt. Okay, nice. So I can give, let's say, 7 out of 10, for example, and say, please give more details. And I click on submit. Now, when I give 7 out of 10 to this student, all the students in the group get 7. So it's automatically given to the whole group. I hope that's clear, and this is what you are expecting, I think.
Yes, thank you. Great.
Okay, excellent. So that's essentially about the group and how you work with group and assignment and grading. Okay, now let me talk about a little bit about grading center. What I want to mention about the grading center is that, when you have a lot of columns and a lot of students, like in this course, there are 96 students and there are, let's say, 30 columns, maybe 40 columns, it becomes really cumbersome and difficult. And Blackboard does not have an option to, resize the column width, or, the default setting for the number of rows is 11. You can always display more rows compared to 10 instead of 10. Let's say I want to display 25 rows, but again, you need a larger screen or browsing and so on. So there is something called smart views, which means basically instead of showing the whole grade center, of course, seeing the whole grade center is nice when you have limited entries or you want to see a specific just to make sure it's there. But sometimes, showing the whole grade center and browsing and scrolling is not so much fun, especially if you are a coordinated course coordinator, or you have a common section from multiple sections and so on. So there's something called smart views. So instead of seeing everyone, you want to see only a specific group, or you want to see only the assignments, for example. So within Grade Center, by the way, there are assignment as a smart view, but I'm going to create something more than this. So if I look into the full Grade Center and if I click on Manage and Smart Views, Smart Views is basically like a filtered view of any specific item. So assignments is a smart view. So if you click on, by the way, this is by assignments and tests are always there by default as smart views. You can always remove them or hide them or add more. So if I click on assignments only, I see only the assignments. Let me just put the icon number of rows back to 10. I can only see the assignments, and you can see there is, by the way, I can hide this availability because everybody is available. So I can hide this column. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have only 9 columns, which is much easy to view, and I can see it in a specific, like a filtered way. So this is basically filtering. They call it smart views. Now, if you want to see something more, for example, if I see smart views, I can create my own smart view. So if I go to smart views and say create smart view, let me see what options do I have. I can go to either groups, for example. So for example, I want to see only a specific group, what that specific group is doing. That specific group could have discussions, can have assignments, can have test, can have some other activity. So let me just select this Zido group, for example, group Zido. And I want to display everything that is relevant to this group. By the way, there are other options like performance or users. You can go to specific users for how they are performing, specific categories for these assignments, custom build query, how do you want availability and so on. Let me just show you one, then you can maybe try out and see if it makes sense for you. So this group Zido is custom built, and I'm going to make it a favorite, and I click OK. Now, once I do that, this is the full Grade Center, and in the Grade Center, you will see an additional link called Group Zido. And this Group Zido has this many activities. They are enrolled in groups activity for this. So you don't see any other group. You see only the Group Zido, which was created only for this activity. Again, this is very interesting, especially if you are handling large number of students, a large number of activities, large number of columns, and so on. So I hope this is sort of new to you, or maybe you have heard it or not tried it. So at least you can see this feature in action. Thank you. Okay, we have another like 30 minutes or so. Let me talk about other tools depending on the time constraint. Okay, excellent. Any more questions? No, I don't see any questions. So if, of course, okay, that's a very good question. What about the total column coming from the registrar before it cannot be deleted? Okay, now the total column, you'll see a small green check mark, which basically means this is an external grade column. in principle, this column in Blackboard is essentially there if you are connecting to other systems like the registrar system or some other grading or assessment system. Currently, or as per the regulation, we don't, in the university, Blackboard is not linked to the grading column to any external system. Blackboard is basically a receiving basic, which means all the enrollment, the users, the courses are available in the registrar system, the banner system, which is pulled by Blackboard, and nothing is going out of Blackboard. Everything is coming in. All the information is coming in. I mean, from different systems, when I'm talking about it. So by default, this tool cannot be deleted. It can only be hidden. And that too, you have to hide it from two places because you don't want the students to see it, and then you don't want to see it as an instructor. So whenever there is a check mark, which means it's an external grade column, you have to click on drop down and click on edit column information. And when you drop down edit column information, you have to disable this. Do not include this in the grade center calculations. Do not show this column to the students. You have to come and explicitly do it from here and click submit. When I click submit, you get a small red line beside it, which means column is not visible to the users, which means the students. So if you click on my grades on the left side, of course, I cannot see it. I have to go to student preview and click on my grades. Only then still the total is being visible because I have just disabled it, and I have to disable it from my side as well. Just give me a second to disable it. And if I go to full grade center, the total is edit column information. By the way, you cannot delete this column as well. I think it's there, so I'm just going to select no, no, and no in everything. And I click submit. So it's hidden from the students and hide from the instructor view. So the total column is gone. This is the full grade center. Okay, let me just go to the student preview and see if I can still see it. Or maybe there is more than one total which is coming in. Let me just go and look. If I go to full grade center, see there is one more total that's coming in. If I go to manage column organization, I'll see the list of all the columns. So this total is hidden. There is one more total. And there is my total column. Let me just try to hide these ones as well. This is weighted total. This is also there. Anything else? And I can show, but this is hiding from me. So I have to first go and sort of this I can delete, I think.
And also go to the column itself and just hide it from students.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Any of the column, drop down, and it says, hide from students or off something off.
Yes, it's hide from
That's another one.
This is one.
And then students cannot see those. And of course, if you go to the manage, you can hide it from yourself as well.
Yes, I want to hide it for everyone. In fact, I want to delete it.
Oh, you can just go to manage and then delete.
Yes. But the problem, Victor, is you cannot delete an external grade column. It can only be hidden.
Oh, yes.
The whole point of external grade column is it's supposed to link to other systems if you would like to do that.
I see.
So let me see if I have already deleted it. If I click on my grades. Yeah, I think I have finally got rid of the total. See, you get average assignment and my total column, but the total column is gone. So you always have to go to student preview just to check what the student sees and what the student cannot see. So sometimes you assume that you have hidden it, but it's not hidden. So you just have to make sure of that. Excellent. So let me talk about online attendance. Okay. So online attendance, let me quickly talk about it. So I think we are done essentially with the Grade Center, some essential idea, but you have to just go to Grade Center and try out these different features that are available under Manage, like grading periods, grading schema, color codes, categories, smart views. That's what we just saw. Column organization, we have seen it. Row visibility, if you want to hide it, and so on. You can always upload grades from the Excel file if you want to upload, or download it from here and then make changes and upload. So that's also possible. Now let me come to online attendance. As I mentioned, there are two tools in Blackboard for online attendance. One is built in directly by Blackboard, and the second one is a third-party tool which is called online attendance. So let's go to the first tool, which is under course tools and attendance. Now, once I click on it, this is a cloud-based tool for Blackboard. So it sort of makes changes to your course a little bit different. So it tries to get information from the cloud and sort of adjust the font size a little bit, so you see a little bit bigger and a little bit distorted. But the moment you come back to the home page, it basically resets and everything is okay. So if I click on attendance tool, and if I add the attendance, so it says for each class meeting, you can add whether a student is late, absent, and so on. And you can have more help over here, which sort of talks about this attendance page and some of the details and how you can, how the students view the attendance. So you have to click attendance and click add attendance. Now, once you do that, it sort of uses a default grading schema, which is basically present, late. Present is 100%, late is 50, as absent is 0, excused. And then you have points, and I click on save. This is by default if I have not changed, so I'm not saving. I can just click on this close. Now, this shows me basically all the users in this course with their first and last names. And if you scroll down, you'll be able to see the others. There are about 100 users, and I can see some of the users have uploaded their photos, so I can at least identify them much easier. Now, one of the limitations of this tool is that it does not show the student ID, I mean the username, which is S2020 whatever. It does not show, unfortunately. It only shows you the first and last name and the overall score. So that's the first limitation of this tool. But if you ask the students to upload their photos, maybe that can help to some extent. So you can see some of the users have uploaded their photos, so that is visible. So this is for an overall, you want to mark the attendance. So for this meeting means this is typically for today, whenever you want to log in, and I can click present for all of them if I'm sure all of them are present or late or absent, or I can do just one by one. I'm just randomly putting something, or I can just say present, mark all present, and override everybody is present. It takes a couple of seconds. It takes a couple of seconds because it's about 100 users that it's marking all in one shot. And as a student, so everybody is present over here. You can see all are green and 100%. And this is automatically saved. The moment you click one present, it's automatically saved. And if you look at overall, it says it's present 96 of the student, 100% class attendance. If I want to change anything, I can just change it from here. Just for the sake of demonstration, I'll make one late. You'll see the overall percentage change. As a student, you have to go to the grade center or my grades, because if I go to the grade center from here, if I go to the grade center, I can see that a new column has been added towards the end, which is called attendance, and it gives me the grade of each student. So the attendance tool that Blackboard uses is more like a grading tool where everybody has to have a percentage, and you define the percentage. Attendance is 100, absent is 0, late is 50%, and you can make it 75%, for example, depending on whatever you want. And the student, they can see from their student preview and click on my grades. One of the grade will be attendance somewhere here. Yeah, this attendance. This was graded, it's 100. So you keep updating. It's overall signed by the instructor 100%. It was overall score 1 present, 1 late. So the student will see their summary in a grade under my grades. So I hope this is clear in terms of online the attendance tool available by Blackboard. just to summarize, it has all the options except showing the student username, and the students can upload a photo and the students see their own attendance within the Grade Center. The second tool that is available, which is like a third-party tool, but it integrates sort of seamlessly, is online attendance. So if you click on the course tools and click on online attendance over here, again, you have to set up something very similar. I also have to add this link for online attendance over here, otherwise the students do not see it. So let me just do that. If I click on this plus and tool link, and I will call it online attendance, and I use the tool online attendance over here, and I make it available to users, and I click submit. So I have to add this link, otherwise the students do not see this link. So let me just online attendance. It's not moving easily because I think there is some browser issue, but I can just move it from here. I'm just manually moving this link, otherwise I have to open a different browser window. Sometimes the browser, let me refresh it. Okay, it's still down. Okay, I can work with it. Sometimes the browser gives an issue with moving content. So I can do a date setup of this attendance. So from, if I say for the whole month of August, for example, from August 1 to August 31st, Sunday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and save the settings, I have to do an online attendance date setup. And then I'll get this PALEU, P for present, A for absent, L for late, excused, or absence. So if I want, by default, everybody is present, I can just save the attendance, or I can just, select something randomly for late and so on. I click save attendance. So the attendance record for today's date has been saved. Again, the same restriction that is available for the Blackboard attendance tool is the same over here. You see only the first and the last name. You do not see the student username. So again, that is challenging, because especially if you have a coordinated course or a large class where you have more than 50, 60 students, there are bound to be some similar names, which might cause an issue. So in this case, the attendance tool by Blackboard is a little better, because it allows you to have photos that students can upload themselves, and you can sort of identify using the photos of the student. So this is available now. If I look as a student, if I go to student preview, the result of my attendance is not under my grades, but it is under online attendance, and I can see that I have been present for this date. Present, again, it's something very similar. Number of presents is 1, absent is 0, late, excuse, and so on. It does not give a grade. This is more like informatory attendance. Yes, coming to how the students use QR codes for attendance. So there is another tool, as I mentioned, by the ICTC, and unfortunately, I do not have any control, or I'm not the admin, so I cannot demonstrate or show the tool to you, but I can mention that this tool was recently released by ICTC, and it's under the portal. I will send you a recording. I'll send you the recording of that Zoom meeting that happened a couple of months ago, maybe in June, I think. That shows you, again, that tool is also sort of under development. It's totally in-house development, and the ITC team is working on it. That tool basically shows you a QR code that is changed every couple of seconds, that the student can scan the QR code and mark the attendance using the mobile app tool that the university has. So I'll send you that recording. That way you will be able to understand. But again, there are certain limitations in that tool as well. Just to give you an example, that tool is by default linked with the registrar. So it shows you how many days that you have the classes already assigned. For example, if you are teaching Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursday, and if you have a special class on Wednesday for some reason, like an office hour or a help session, you cannot take the attendance for that because it's not there in the system. And the system does not allow you to create your own days and so on. So I encourage you to try out these different tools, but in my opinion, ICTC tool is a little bit more customized for KFUPM community because it's in-house developed tool. So I encourage you to try that out. And after the meeting, I'll send. Let's see if I can send you the link in this one itself. Just give me 1 second. I think it's much easier. I'll send it in this chat, so at least you can. Just give me 1 second, please. So under the recordings, I have the Zoom recording for the cloud, and it was electronic classroom attendance system. This was in June, so I'll just share this link with you. This is electronic classroom attendance system, June 2023. And this is the link for the recording. Just save this link, and you can also view it later on, and it will be, I'll send it with the recording, with this recording as well, in case if you're interested. It's a small 30-minute or 40-minute Zoom meeting recording. So if you are interested, just have a look at this recording of the electronic classroom attendance system developed by ICTC. By the way, this tool by ICTC has no link to Blackboard as such, so you cannot access it from Blackboard or anything. It's a different application, different tool accessed by the university mobile app for students and so on. So that's why I do not have information on that, because it's not linked or directly related to Blackboard. I hope that answers the question. Okay, so I think we have covered most of the tools. Let me just talk very quickly about test surveys and pools. I'm sure you have all used test surveys and pools in some form or the other. The easiest way to see is there are some assessments built in this course, so you can just try that out. If you want to create new test surveys and pools, just click on course tools, click on test surveys and pools. You have different test surveys and pools. The difference between test and surveys is surveys are not graded, and typically student responses are anonymous. They're useful for gathering information. Test is a relatively set of questions that is used to measure grade performance. And you have sort of all the options in terms of the test you can build. For example, if I build a test 1, I can create different type of questions like calculated formula, either or, fill in the blanks, multiple choice, hotspot, true and false, and so on. I can reuse the questions. I can upload questions in a specific format if I have it in, for example, a text file or a Word file. There is more help over here, like which format is acceptable for different type of questions, like essay type. You need it in a specific format, matching and multiple choice, and so on. It sort of helps you in uploading. Also, we have another tool called Responders that allows you to create questions locally on an application and then upload it to Blackboard. That also helps you if you are uploading it to multiple sections. For example, if you create one quiz of, let's say, 100 questions, and then you upload it to 10 different sections, so you can use Responders to do that. Otherwise, you can also reuse questions, like find questions from different pools. So if they are available, I can just use this tool, and either I can link it to the original question or I can copy it. So if I make a copy, I will have my own, and if I make changes over here, I can fine tune these questions. So there are some built-in questions available: yes, no, multiple choice, true and false, mostly multiple choice over here. So the test can be created either by reusing the questions or create your own questions, and each are 10 points. Now, when you create a question which is test 1, it has not been deployed. You can deploy it by going to assessments and test, for example, and click on test assessment. By default, it shows you either to create a new test or add an existing test. Now, when you add an existing test, it gives you all the options, like how to control the test. You have test 1 by reusing. So you can write some description by reusing some questions. Make it available to the students. Yes, I want to add an announcement, so you get an automatic announcements. How many attempts you'd like to give, unlimited or specific number of attempts. I said, let me just give one attempt. There is something called force completion. So once you start the test, it must be completed in one setting. This is helpful, especially if you want the student to do in one setting, but this can be counter helpful if if a student faces a technical issue, like he got an internet disconnected or the browser hanged for some reason, then you have to give an additional attempt. So force completion is not very recommended if you are expecting students to connect from multiple places. You can set the timer for the question and auto submit on, let's say after 10 minutes, you want this to be auto submitted. You want the test to display after a specific time until a specific time, or add a password to the test. And you can also limit a geographical location. So if you want the students only to take from building 5 lab, for example, this is especially useful if you are doing a test in a lab, but on desktop or laptop machines that are connected wired, because wireless will have a different IP address. It will be 10.13, wired will have a different IP address, like in building 5, it will be 10.5. So if I put a custom filter, it allows me like what IPs you allow and what IPs you don't allow. Don't try this if you're not very sure, but if you are very sure, like building 5, one of the building has been entered just for the sake of demonstration, you can limit it to building 5, and it can be only a desktop wired machines. It cannot be a wireless. Test availability exceptions, you want to add a specific user or a group. So if it's only for a specific group, then you add it, or a specific user, when you want to give exceptions, this is for the exception. There is a due date for it if you want the students to finish before this due date, but still submissions are accepted after this date. And a couple of more options like include this test in the score calculation, when should be the results be available, you randomize the questions, one question at a time, prohibit backtracking. So all these options are available when you deploy the test. And when you click submit, so this is test 1, and you can take it as instructor and a student just to understand that how the students will see the test, and click begin. You can see all these questions and so on. Questions has been randomized. I don't know the answers for these questions, but I'm just trying to take a best shot and save all answers. All questions were saved. Save and submit. So click OK to review the results. I got something like 20 out of 60, 2 correct out of 6. So by the way, I can only see the questions, not the answers, because the answers were not shown over there, and so on. So this is how you take a test from an instructor. You create a test, you reuse the questions, you take the test as a student, make it available to a specific date time. You have options of multiple attempts, force submission, timer, and so on. I'm sure you have used some of these settings or some basic tests, but again, if you'd like to use test in bulk for multiple courses, as I mentioned, you can use the responders tool in the resources page on the upper right side, because responders does allow you, it's a Windows-based application that allows you to create assessments and publish it to multiple courses. And we have a license for that. So if you're interested, just create an eDesk request with this information, and we'll send you this information for using responders. And I'm sure some of you are already using responders. So I have a question: how to auto-generate questions for n factorial and have them auto-graded? To address your second part of the question, auto-graded means you have to create certain type of questions that can be automatically graded. For example, multiple choice questions where you have defined the right answer can be auto-graded, where you have true and false, that can be auto-graded. But essay type questions, fill in the blanks, short answers, those cannot be auto-graded. So you have to do a special selection of only those type of questions. How to auto-generated questions for n factorial, I'm not sure about exactly, but what I understand is you can use something like, if I go to course test surveys and pools, if I go to tests, for example, this test, I can create a question called calculated formula. And in the formula, it generates a range. For example, just let's say question text. I think I have to put X plus Y, for example. I have to answer is X plus Y, I think. Answer range, I can allow 0.25, for example, and numeric and next. So X variable 0 to Y, and I can number of answer sets, let's say 100 sets, for example. And if I say calculate, it will generate these different values for different 100 type of answer sets. Again, I have not used it in terms of exact specific formula, but the calculated formula, I think, can address some of what you are expecting. And I click submit. So I'm expecting a calculated formula, and those are the correct answers for it in terms of decimal and the answer range and number of answer sets that you have. So that's essentially about, I'm trying to just touch upon some of the key features of these tools that you might have used or might be interested to use. So I have addressed, I think, little bit of most of the things. So let me see if I have to add anything. Yeah, I think essentially that's all for what we have. We are almost out of time, so I'll keep a couple of minutes for the question answer session. If you have any, I'm sure some of you have already asked your questions during the session, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And thank you for attending. And of course, I'll share the recording after the session, and appreciate your time and patience and your questions and interaction. Thank you again, and I'll be here for a couple of minutes to answer your questions. Thank you again.
Assalamu alaikum.
How
are you, Dr. Sanallah?
Fine. How are you, Sultan?
My question was about the n factorial and the auto-graded. I have the format to compute, for example, 5 factorial or 4 factorial, but I wanted n in general. So I will generate 10 questions or 20 questions from, say, n1 to 20. Then you have to find the factorial. So the system will generate the questions, but then how to auto-grade them? Is there any factorial function in this calculator that you show us before?
To be honest, I have not used it. I am not aware of it. But Dr. Waji has used it in his course, and he has done this sort of back and forth calculation where I think he has included factorial. So I have to refer you to Dr. Waji to ask this very specific question.
Yes, please. If there's any way to find the factorial, please let me know either by email or.
Sure. Let me connect you with Dr. Waji on this, and I think sure. he will be able to guide you over there. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Mujahid, do you have a question? Yes, Brother Mustafa, yes, these generated values have a type, but as I mentioned, calculated formula questions, Dr. Waji has used it in his course for specific questions and with his students, so he might be able to give a clearer example. For me, as a non-teaching Blackboard administrator, I have not used it with students, so I don't have an exact example to sort of illustrate the case. I'm just showing you that the tool has this functionality and it can be used, and unfortunately, I do not have experience in teaching students with this, so sorry about that.
I have a quick question, Brother Sanallah.
Yeah, sure, Dr. Yahya, please go ahead.
Yes, when will you send the video? Is it to our emails and also for the previous workshop for the introduction? I haven't received anything.
Right now, I'm compiling all the links. So end of this week, once we finish sessions for today, hopefully early next week, we'll send all the recordings.
Thank you so much. Jazakumullah khair.
Most welcome. Thank you for attending. So I have another question. Is it possible to merge calculated formula question with multiple choice, such as giving different answers based on a formula for each choice? In my opinion, no, it's not possible. But you can use calculated formula in a little bit, how do I say, in a little bit more advanced way. Again, I would refer to Dr. Baji to ask. In fact, I'll send these questions to Dr. Baji, and maybe I'll put you in CC. At least he will be able to reply you better with experience with calculated formula. Thank you. Okay, thank you all for attending. I think we have this much time. It's almost noon time. So thank you all for attending. And one last statement, as I mentioned, I'm going to have another webinar in the afternoon at 2 p.m. in which I'll mention about the new Blackboard system, its availability, a little bit more details. Although we don't have the system yet, it will be available sometime next year. But at least I'll give you a sneak peek of how the system looks like. It's, again, the same Blackboard system, but the interface has been enhanced greatly. So I encourage you to attend if you are interested. If you are not able to make it, we will send the recording anyway. So you will have an idea of the new system. So thanks again for attending this session, and look forward to see you in more sessions in the reporting week activities. Thank you. Bye-bye.